Well, welcome back, everybody. This is Pucks from the Pine Tree Pod. I'm your host, Benjamin Kennedy. Thank you so much for joining me this evening. Hope everybody had a wonderful weekend. It was a rainy one up here in Maine, so great weekend to sit around and watch hockey all weekend, which is essentially what I did. Me and my kiddo did a lot of playing with toys and watching hockey this weekend, so it was awesome. A lot to talk about here on this podcast. A lot of news and notes items from a little bit from last week, a little bit from today, and of course, a lot of NHL playoffs kind of updates and recaps to talk about. Before we dive into all that, I do just want to send out one more big thank you to Maine Mariners owner Dexter Payne and play-by-play media director Michael Keeley for joining me last Wednesday as we did a kind of a Maine Mariners season recap and took some questions, and it was just another lovely time to talk to both of those men. They've been so generous throughout the year with their time. Sad to see the Mariners season come to an end, but just a big thank you to those gentlemen, and looking forward to talking to them. We may get them back on in the summer as we see the roster come back in the fold, but was a great time talking to them last week. And so again, big thank you to Mike and to Dexter. So let's dive in. Out of Pittsburgh today, head coach Mike Sullivan, longtime head coach of the Pittsburgh Penguins, out, mutually parting ways there after 10 seasons and two Stanley Cup championships. Sullivan's a career 479, 311, 15, and 112 record. That's a 592 winning percentage. That's through 917 regular season games. In 89 games, he has a 47 and 42 record, 528 winning percentage, and of course, two Stanley Cups to his record. I'm not surprised by this move taking place. I just wasn't surprised. I was actually slightly surprised it didn't happen a year ago. For the Pens, this is far less about Mike Sullivan and his abilities to coach the team, and more about beginning to turn the page to the next chapter for the Penguins. As they move on here for their club. Uh, I think they've been behind the eight ball in terms of turning the page, in my opinion. And I think they should have started making more moves for the future over the past couple of years. Now, missing the playoffs for 3 years in a row, there's no questions, that change was needed here. Be watching the Pens this summer, though. I think I won't be surprised if you see other long tenured Pens out the door, too. Will be something to watch. Who comes next for head coaches for Pittsburgh? I think that's going to be a lot of fun to watch. Lots of different directions they could go. I think if Kyle Dubas, if he trades off more veterans and starts to get more into a full-on rebuild project, my bet is they go maybe with somebody younger, maybe perhaps a first-time NHL head coach, maybe an assistant from someplace, maybe somebody from the AHL, perhaps. Not really sure, but a lot of candidates out there to choose from, so it's going to be very, very interesting to see what they do. For Mike Sullivan, listen, if the Boston Bruins haven't sent a private jet out to Pittsburgh yet, and if Don Sweeney and Cam Neely are not on that plane with a red carpet and a blank check in hand, I would just be completely lost for words. I brought this up in an earlier video just a few weeks ago, breaking down potential head coaches, for the Boston Bruins, and Sully was at the top of this list. So, man, we better have a plane out there ready to talk to him. He is number one on my list. Listen, Sullivan's a Boston guy. He's coached here before, been a number of years ago, but he has coached here before. Tons of success since he left Boston. Knows how to coach, knows how to handle star players, and obviously can take the heat in these bigger, hockey markets. Pittsburgh's not the biggest sports market, but the huge hockey market for sure, huge football market. And of course, as we all know, right, he is Charlie McAvoy's father-in-law. Listen, I know many Bruins fans probably want the team to go maybe in a younger direction, try to find that next, Spencer Carberry type coach. But I think Sullivan should be the absolute top candidate for the Boston Bruins this coming year. I do believe Sullivan's going to have multiple suitors, though. There's no question in my mind about that. How attractive, truly how attractive is the job in Boston at this point? Are there more appealing jobs out there that may come calling for him? I do think there are, and we'll see what teams are in the mix for that. I think there's some teams out there that are far closer to the Stanley Cup than Boston, and that could weigh heavily for Sully. If he has choices to make. I'm going to be very intrigued as to where this goes, not just for Sullivan, not just for Boston, but also for Pittsburgh. It's a long time to be coaching a team, and he's been such a big part of the identity there in Pittsburgh. So we'll be curious to see just how that moves forward, right? How they get on there in Penguins land. I am just going to hit the mute button real quick. Apologize for that. And this is a nice segue, I guess, into our next topic here. Going back to last Wednesday, the Boston Bruins brass conducted their end of season media session. And man, it was interesting, wasn't it? Fiery, yes. Emotional, yeah, you could say that. A bit out of touch, yeah. I mean, hell, if the Bruins had played defense as well as Neely and Sweeney did during that hour, we'd still be in the playoffs today. I mean, come on. Uh, I'm not going to give a full breakdown into every single talking point that came out of that session. I would definitely rather steer you in the direction of some of those Boston writers that are down there, guys like Evan Marinofsky, Connor Ryan, Ty Anderson, Joe Haggerty, all kinds of guys down there that have given great coverage. They all have podcast coverage as well. Go check those guys out. They have a lot of great takes and comments about this, many of which I agree with. So I don't want to become too repetitive here, but I definitely agree with a lot of what they had to say. Here are just a couple of my takeaways from that session. Coaching search is ongoing, as Sweeney talked about. Sacco is going to be a candidate. You don't know if it's more of just a patch on the back, give you an opportunity, or if they're legitimately considering him. But he will be part of the group that will be interviewed. Apparently, the next coach doesn't need to have NHL head coaching experience, but NHL exposure is very, very important. When they said that, I immediately thought of Jay Leach, who's sitting there on the bench, and he's going to be a real question, right? If they don't hire him as the next head coach, what do they do with Leach? Does he get picked up by another club? There's a few other clubs out there that will probably be interviewing Leach. So are they going to lose him yet again, like they did to Seattle last time? Um, Sweeney also mentions that they hope to have a head coach in place before free agency opens. He said basically that would be the perfect scenario. Moving on to Charlie Jacobs, owner, stated that he felt Sweeney had a good pulse on the coaching changes that had been made. Let me repeat that. He said that he felt that Sweeney had a good pulse on the coaching changes that had been made. I mean, laughable statement, in my opinion, yes, and completely out of touch with where this team is and why this team is where it is today. I mean, if you think that firing Bruce Cassidy was a good decision, or Sweeney had his pulse correctly on that, I'm sorry. We're watching different games, man. We're watching a whole different sport. Um, Look what Jim Montgomery is doing right now. Yeah, I know they couldn't work out an extension with him. Yeah, I know maybe it wasn't going to work out beyond this year, but come on. You can't sit there and tell the fan base that Sweeney has a good pulse on the coaching decisions that he's made. 3 Jack Adams Award winners fired. All 3 still represented in the playoffs today while the Boston Bruins are out playing golf. Just completely laughable statement. More from Jacobs. Kevin DuPont did ask Jacobs a question about the rise in season ticket prices. And man, Jacobs just appeared very uncomfortable with that question, almost like kind of slightly unprepared for it as well. He answered that no changes are coming, but man, just seemed very, very uncomfortable with the question. Was very squirmy in his seat, you could see. Moving on to Cam Neely, talked about accountability. Then he immediately gets defensive about their drafting record. Brings up 2015 and actually provides some insight into those 3 draft picks they had in a row. Um, and kind of talked a little bit about that, saying that they had tried to trade up, and when they couldn't do that, they probably should have taken a breather, gone back to their table to reassess and talk to the team a little bit. He admitted they kind of sort of just rushed through the picks, and also noting that Sweeney was brand new to the job at that time. And it's like, why do you got to bring it up? Like, that's not really what DuPont was was, you know, asking about there. I mean, I think it was Dupont. Was it Dupont that asked that question? I think it might have been. I might be mistaken on that one, but I just wish he would have said, "Listen, yeah, we've missed on some picks. We're excited about this coming draft. We're confident we can land some great talent, great prospects." That's all he had to say there. But he just brings up the past. He brings up, winning records over the year. He just got really defensive about that. Um, just again, the whole event, the whole hour felt very tone deaf, very out of touch, very, very defensive, and I'd say very disappointing after what was a very disappointing season. Last little note, they did talk about Sweeney being on the last year of his contract, and Cam kind of made so well, we'll see. We're thinking about it, but didn't really give Sweeney a full on glowing you know, feeling coming out of that. So no, those take two to tango at the end and tried to laugh it off a bit. But I do think this is a huge year for Sweeney. And yeah, listen, I've said it before, I'll say it again. I think that Sweeney probably gets more crap than he deserves, but I think there's plenty of blame that he needs to take and that the entire organization needs to take. And I just feel like coming off the year you did, firing yet another great coach, finishing last in the Atlantic, and doing what you did, at the trade deadline, to come out with that sort of end of year presser being defensive and emotional and just out of touch, horrible optics. And I'm going to really I'm going to watch, of course, this summer in terms of what they do. I always watch, but it's going to be really intriguing. I'm not sure how much I trust these guys right now. I just don't. I just don't think I do. So that's what we have there. Again, like I said, go check out some of those other Boston writers if you want a more in-depth look at that presser from last Wednesday. And I know the video is still out there. It was maybe worth the watch if you want to get a good chuckle. Well, let's move on. I'm going to talk real briefly here about the Maine Nordiques. Of course, our team out of Lewiston in the North American Hockey League, moving on to the division finals. So good job to the Nords. They win that series 3-1 versus the Maryland Black Bears. A big 5-2 win on Saturday up in Lewiston, up at the Colisee, in front of a crowd of over 2,600 people. So, for an arena like that, that's a great crowd. They are now awaiting the winner of the Rochester Junior Americans and the Johnstown Tomahawks, tied 2-2. That game going down tonight at the Rochester Ice Center out there in Western New York, 7 p.m. puck drop. Listen, this has been a fun team to follow all year. Really excited for them. Excited that they're moving forward into the next round. I think they get a legit shot here. I do. I don't see why they don't. They've been very consistent all year, and should be a lot of fun. And going back to the 24th of April, the Nords did announce that goaltender Matthew Delarusso has committed to playing at Northeastern University. They're in Hockey East next year, so congrats to Matthew. Big time program. I'm sure we'll be seeing him around UMaine for some UMaine games coming up next season. So let's turn the page. Let's give a quick outline of what we've seen so far in the NHL playoffs. They have been fantastic so far. I would say it's definitely fantastic out west, where all four series, as you can see here on my very crunched board tonight, all series at 2-2 out west. We're going to start with Winnipeg and St. Louis, tied 2-2. Of course, nightmarish start for Connor Hellebuyck. The reigning Vezina winner looks like he's going to win that trophy again. But man, he is just coming into this playoff. These four games, 4.24 goals against average and an 817 save percentage. When you look at his 2024 playoff numbers, 4.80 goals against an 853 save percentage. Just bizarre, man, just bizarre. He is coming off a 47-win season where he posted 2.00 goals against a 925 save percentage. And again, like I said, it's about to win his second Vezina in a row. Plenty of people want to shout out that, okay, his team has maybe struggled in front of him a little bit, so on and so forth. But, at some point in the playoffs, you've got to make a big save or two in those big moments. You just have to. He was pulled from both games out there in St. Louis in games 3 and 4. Just tough to see. I just hope he can change the narrative around for himself a little bit, because he's such a great goaltender. And I'd love to see him have some success in the playoffs. And listen, his team is going to need him to if they want to win this series. They want to survive the series. St. Louis is not going away. Full value to the Blues, man. Like, very impressed with what they've shown so far. We know how tough they are at home. Um, Listen, many have suggested their roster is really more built for the playoffs. You've got guys like Bennington who just seem to step up when the lights get a little bit brighter. Yeah, I mean, listen, could we see another President's Trophy winner go down in the first round? Us Bruins fans know a whole lot about that, and like for Monty anyway, at least he'd be on the better side of it, right? So, been a really fun series. Um, I am pulling for Hellebuyck to at least change the narrative, win or lose. I just hope he can play a little bit better than what he has. It's been really tough to see now for 2 seasons in a row. Uh, Moving on to Dallas and Colorado. That series again tied up 2-2. So many counting Dallas out of this series after that game 1 performance, and of course with the major injuries they're dealing with. So I'm really happy to see them making a series of this, making a go of it. And what a story to see Gabriel Landeskog scoring his very first goal in that last game. First goal in 3 seasons. I mean, the fact that the guy is walking around, let alone playing in an NHL playoff game and scoring goals is just absolutely amazing. What a feel good story. So happy, absolutely happy to see that. And you could see the energy and the excitement on his face when he scored that. I mean, he scored a goal in the NHL playoffs is pretty cool, but just relief, um, and just overjoyed by that for a guy who's 32 years old and been in the league for a long time. It's just again awesome to see all the culmination of all the work he had to do to get back. Kind of came out in that moment, and that was just awesome. But listen, the series gets back at it tonight, back in Dallas, 9:30 Eastern. Puck drop there. No Miro Heiskanen yet for Dallas. And it looks like Jason Robertson also, I don't believe he's going to go. He is skating, making progress, but I don't believe either one of these guys will be out there tonight for this very pivotal game 5. Super fun series so far. A couple overtime games, and there are all sorts of fun storylines. Of course, one of the storylines is Mikko Rantanen, longtime Avalanche, now, of course, playing for the Stars. Only 1 assist through 4 games. They need more out of him. They just need more out of him if they want to win this series. Again, cheering for 7 games. I do think we'll go the distance. And I'll be curious if Dallas can get healthy. If they can get either one of those 2 guys back, that could go a long way for them and for their choices, for their end results here. And excuse me, just one moment. I'm going to hit the pause button or the mute button real quick. Sorry about that, guys. These allergies continuing to wreak havoc on me. I feel like I'll go 2 or 3 days. Allergies won't be a problem. And just as soon as I'm getting ready to do a podcast, my allergies just say, "Yep, you know what? We're gonna screw with you today, buddy. We are gonna make this a show." So I do apologize. Continuing to deal with these nasty spring allergies. Let's move on to Vegas and Minnesota. Of course, I am wearing the Minnesota hat tonight. So impressed with the Wild in this series. I did not see this coming, guys. I got to admit when I'm wrong. I had the Minnesota Wild finishing 7th in the Central. So that just tells you how much I know about hockey, right? But and I had Vegas taking the series in 5. Listen, they dominated the Wild during the regular year. But Minnesota, man, are playing tough, tough hockey, and I love to see it. Gustafson in net for the Wild. He has looked brilliant so far. 2.58 goals against, 919 save percentage, and of course, Kirill Kaprizov, 4 goals, 4 assists, 8 points in the 4 games so far. Probably been the best skater on the ice for either team to this point. My question for Vegas is how do they adjust? Cassidy, of course, on their bench has a lot of experience. Seeing how he approaches these next couple of games will be really interesting to watch. Maybe they need to make some adjustments, or maybe they just need some of their guys to step up. Listen, Jack Eichel, 1 assist so far. Mark Stone, 1 assist. Shea Theodore, 1 goal, 1 assist with a -5 in a plus minus through the first 4 games. They need more out of those guys. They just do. Hurdle's doing his part. He's a 3 goals, 2 assists for 5 points. So is it adjustments they need or just their guys to get off their tails and start producing? Listen, Minnesota, they've already shown they can win at the Fortress. Can they win at least one more to keep this series going and to take this series down? My gut does tell me Vegas figures out a way to win this, but it's been way more competitive than I ever thought it would be, and just good on the Wild for that. Been a lot of fun. Moving on now to LA and Edmonton, 2-2 there as well. Listen, I turned this game off last night. I just did. LA was up 3-1. Figured they had the game in the bag and we're going to be up 3-1 in the series. And boy, I wake up and I shouldn't have been surprised to see that the Oilers they come back in overtime. Draisaitl delivering once again for the team. Crazy series so far, and one I thought was simply over after the first two games. I just did. I think a lot of us did. Um, and many of our argued it probably should be over. Um, listen, man, if the Kings choke this series away, head coach Jim Hiller is going to be looking at a very, very long summer for himself. He just lays down an awful goalie interference challenge in that third period of game three. You lose that challenge, and 10 seconds later, you're on the penalty kill. Bouchard pops one in. All of a sudden, you go from up a goal to down a goal in the span of about 10 seconds of ice time, 11 seconds of ice time. Just such a bad swing in that period and in that game for the Kings. Now, Edmonton, maybe they still win that game, but a decision like that by your head coach to challenge, but you watch it, go back and watch it, completely no goalie interference there. I don't know what they were looking at, just a completely unacceptable decision and really put his team in a very vulnerable situation there in that game three. Then you come to game four. Let's review the time on ice for the LA Kings defensemen. Edmondson, 36 minutes, 16 seconds. Doughty with a 32:57. Andersen, 34 minutes, 14 seconds. Gavrikov, 31 minutes, 40 seconds. Clark with only 11 minutes and 58 seconds. And I think you pronounce it Maravarer, only 2 minutes and 26 seconds of ice time. How in the world do you have four guys over 30 minutes and, one under 12 and one under 3 minutes? Like, just very, very odd to see that. Listen, I get it. You have to shorten your bench sometimes, but to give Clark only 12 minutes and have four demon over 30, just again, unacceptable. Unacceptable from your head coach. That can't happen. Not against Edmonton, not against those top tier players. You're talking two of the best players in the whole world are out there on the other side. And you just, again, you put your guys in a really tough, vulnerable position where they were just drained by the end of that game. Listen, you do stuff like this, you lose. You just do. Listen, I know Hiller was very salty in his post-game presser after that game, but man, he's got to take some accountability for these decisions. He just has to. I felt like LA had a stranglehold on the series, but now you're giving life to the best tandem in the sport. Good luck, LA. Good luck now trying to finish off this sleeping giant that you just kind of let get back into the series. Just, again, completely unacceptable. Now, where everything, of course, is tied out west, we are looking at a very different story out east, where you have three series that could end in five. And unless Tampa Bay can answer tonight, they could be done in five as well. So very different when you go from west to east, starting with Washington and Montreal. Washington leading this series 3-1. Listen, though, I've loved the Canadians and their fight in this series. This could have easily been a tied series at this point, in my opinion. That game yesterday, ends 5-2, was a lot closer than that score would indicate. Listen, at this point, Washington they're a little bit deeper. They're a little bit more experienced, they're a little bit more ready for these moments. But man, I do love how the Canadians are pushing Washington around a little bit. I think it's a huge experience get for these young guys. I actually think this series could potentially help Washington too, where they've been pushed around a little bit, help them be more prepared for that next round, which most likely will be Carolina. I think that's how it breaks down. If I don't have the full on bracket in front of me, I think they get Carolina, the winner of that Carolina jersey matchup next. Logan Thompson back out there. Big deal, no doubt, for the Caps. Surprised as his injury. It did not look good when that happened. Of course, on the other side, you have Sam Montembeault. Had to come out of game three. Couldn't go in game four. He is listed as day-to-day. You wonder if he can go in game five. He's been very good as well. Special teams been a big story in this one, guys. Listen, Montreal with the better of the play so far, 38.5 on the power play and 90% on the penalty kill. Washington, of course, their power play been next to nothing at 10%, the PK 61.5%. Not at all what you would expect when you started this series. Listen, we know the Caps are missing Ferravari right now, one of their better D men. But listen, they got to tighten that ship up. They do. They got to tighten their ship right up. Listen, I won't be shocked if Montreal comes away with another win, tries to push this to 6 games. Been a lot more fun to watch than I maybe anticipated when it started. Moving over to Carolina and the New Jersey Devils. Listen, 3-1 for Carolina. Unfortunately, this has probably been the series that's been least exciting in my eyes. Listen, the injuries have just killed the Devils, and it's just too bad. It really is too bad. I feel like this could be a very even series if the Hughes brothers were out there, along with Dylan on defense being missed by the Devils. Carolina, though, they're doing what they do. Strong defense, strong penalty kill. New Jersey has no power play goals so far, and they're only averaging 1.75 goals per game. And the Canes, they're just doing a better job defensively, doing a better job keeping momentum on their side. Yes, they're now dealing with Andersen potentially being out in net yet again, and that could potentially hurt them for a long cup run. But I don't see that, it's really giving them any setback in the series. I do think this is probably over, in 5 games, in my opinion. I do wish I had more to say about this series. New Jersey, they were my Eastern Conference pick at the start of the season. Um, I just wish we could see Jack Hughes healthy for a playoff run. I think he's such a difference maker out there. And as much as you love him, maybe that's part of the problem with this roster construction too, right? We can dive into that later, but if your ability to win or lose a game is so tied to one guy, maybe there's a problem in there. It's a problem of depth. Listen, sure, any team is going to be lessened when you remove your best guy, but without Jack, Devils, quite honestly, they look like a borderline playoff team. First team out of the playoff mix at best right now, and that might be even too polite, at this point to say. But been tough to watch. I've been kind of pulling for the Devils, not just because of my pick. I just, you like to see some of these upsets, but man, it's not happening for them. And we've got the Toronto Maple Leafs, of course, up 3-1 on their provincial brothers, the Ottawa Senators. Listen, if the hockey gods can give me one wish, I just wish that Ottawa will win game 5 and make this a very nervous and anxious few days for the Maple Leafs. I just do. Listen, I'm saying that jokingly, of course, but given the recent kind of bad playoff history for the Leafs, I just think it would be good TV. Game 6 back in Ottawa with Ottawa battling back, winning 2 games in a row. That would be, I think, really good drama. But listen, truth be told, Toronto is simply they're just a deeper, more talented team in the Sens right now. Listen, Olmark's been fine in net for Ottawa, but hasn't really been able to elevate them as much as maybe I was hoping for in this series. Listen, Ottawa, while they've done a decent job kind of limiting Toronto to under 25 shots on goal per game, they still struggle with certain defensive coverages, and they've just given Toronto too much space in bad times to work with, which has been a problem in Ottawa now for a while. Their defense doesn't really smother anybody, and it's really killing them in the series. To beat Toronto and all that high end talent, you just got to smother them, get bodies on them. They've done it at times, but not enough in this series to really make the difference. For the Leafs, they're doing what they should do, right? They're outscoring a lesser team by about 1.25 goals per game. 5-on-5 defensively, I think they've been just fine for the most part, giving up some shots here and there. Ottawa's had some good shot totals, but not a lot of high danger chances given up, in my opinion. I would like to see their PK be a bit tighter for the Leafs moving forward, but overall, this has played out as expected. Can Toronto shut this thing down at home in game 5? I think they're going to need to save that stress, save some of that anxiety, avoid that game 6 back in Ottawa, give themselves a rest, right? The Florida Tampa series, listen, that could go 7 games perhaps, or it could go 5. We don't know. But Florida Tampa, you know what you're getting with those two teams. Either one you end up having to play if you're the Maple Leafs, which leads us to the last series here, Florida and Tampa. Of course, Florida up 2 games to 1 at this point. Less to talk about here, of course. We're only 3 games in. Florida has gotten a jump on Tampa in each of the first 3 games of this series. So my question is, can Tampa flip that script? Can they get a jump on Florida tonight? Can they start more on time and score that first goal in game 4? How much does that really matter in a series like this? I'm not so sure. These teams, of course, they know each other so well at this point. Both clubs have all the cup pedigree you would want. So I don't really know how much that matters. But so far, Florida, scored first in all 3 games, up 2-1. Florida's PKs, they've been excellent so far, 92.3%. So just shutting things down there. Tampa definitely needs to take better advantage of those chances. I think Hagel is back tonight, I do believe, after that 1 game suspension. Of course, we could get into the Kachuk hit at the end of that last game. Yeah, late hit, dirty hit. Not sure if it was a suspendable hit. As much as I love seeing Matthew Kachuk be suspended for dirty play, I think that the penalty at the time was fine. I don't like how Florida does stuff like that when games get out of hand. You've seen a lot of it over the last few years. They play on that edge. Kachuk crossed the line, not enough though, in my opinion, for a suspension. Of course, the game 4 does kick off tonight here, just in a little bit here, back in Miami, 7 o'clock. So coming right up. Of course, I'll have more to say about the series as we have more games. Hoping to see this one go the distance as well because I'm selfish and it's springtime and I want as much playoff hockey as I can get. So I will be pulling for the Lightning in this one. So thank you all for watching and listening tonight. Thank you for putting up with my continued crazy allergies over here. If you do like what you're hearing, though, please don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button down below. I do appreciate it. And until next time, everybody, be kind, show love, and God bless.